Welcome to your DHL Supply Chain Pricing Power Index update. I'm here with Andrew Cox. Andrew, what do you have for us today?
Anthony, the carriers are in the strongest position that they've been in since we started this back in September, and I think probably the strongest pricing power position they've been in since the 2018 freight market. We've got a couple reasons for this. We've seen that volumes have, of course, been the story of the last few weeks. They've been just exploding upwards. They've now fallen 3 days in a row, but you can still see that they're at record levels, nearly 20% higher than they were at the peak of last summer.
Right, and as you mentioned, volumes are still very high, still elevated, but that retraction is something that you were, I think, mentioning and calling last week.
Yeah, we're completely expecting this. We think we did kind of an estimate on how much freight we thought was completely safe from the lockdown and kind of the recessionary downside risk, and we think about 40% of the truckload freight volumes is completely safe. So here we're talking food, medical supplies, and even some consumer packaged goods. But you got to think about that. Some of that demand for the CPG is going to come down because people overbought in the previous weeks. They bought months worth of toilet paper when they really only needed a couple days. So the demand for some of that's going to come down. So we think that most of the freight that's going to be moving, or that has been moving for the history of the freight market, is going to be static for the next couple months.
Got it. So very much a pull forward for a lot of these consumer goods that's not going to be present later on.
No, exactly right, Anthony. And then on the capacity side, capacity still, we think, tighter than at any point last year. We had a very loose capacity for much of 2019, where it tightened up towards the end of the year. It has really tightened up in the last few weeks. You've seen outbound tender rejection rates go nearly at 20. And this tells me two things. It tells me, one, that some drivers are actually staying off the road. They're home with their families, or they're quarantining themselves. And then two, this is a measure of contracted rates, of rejection of contracted rates. So a lot of these carriers are simply rejecting contracted loads to favor the spot market, to test their waters there.
I think that's an excellent point, Andrew, that you brought up. We still have some generally elevated volumes, but it's coming down. But the capacity is still really tight because, as you mentioned, some drivers are self-quarantining and staying off the road, and that can really keep rejections elevated.
Yeah, as long as the outbound tender rejection rates fall slower than the volumes fall, because both are going to fall in the next couple weeks, as long as that dynamic continues, spot rates are still going to stay elevated above contract rates. I believe that for the next couple weeks, spot rates are still going to be higher, but again, we think that I don't know, we only have a couple more weeks of these increased volumes. We're going to see things really fall off a cliff as more businesses, more quarantines happen, everything's shut down.
Right, and so speaking of the outlook in the next few weeks, what's the outlook for the upcoming months?
So we do a 3-month outlook, and we have it at 40. So we're thinking that it will violently snap back here in a couple weeks. We've grown from just 3 weeks ago, we were at near 25, and we've had consecutive 15-point jumps and then a 10-point jump. So this is the highest it's been. I think we're going to see it slide back towards the shippers here in the coming weeks, and we look at more of a balanced market at the end of the summer.
Got you. And a lot of this comes from the consumer side of things. Another aspect, the industrial side of things, definitely a lot of shuttering on that side as well, right?
Yes. So we didn't really take too much of the flatbed market into account here. We're focusing more on truckload and on dry van and reefer in this index particular, but I do think the industrial and manufacturing side is going to have a rough go at it for the next couple months. Flatbed is going to be, almost non-existent for much of the country, especially if construction starts winding down, which it might. It may fare okay because of the outdoor nature and the fact that they can kind of keep some social distancing while they construct things, but there's going to be a slowdown of future projects and things that would have started midsummer.
Excellent. Andrew, thank you so much. Appreciate that update. And thank you so much for tuning in. That's going to do for this edition of the DHL Supply Chain Pricing Power Index update. Be sure to tune in next week for our latest update. Thank you so much.